Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Today we are talking tomato production with Spencer Rudolph of Sage Hill Ranch Gardens, whom you will remember from this recent video, among others. And specifically what we're talking about is increasing tomato production on the same amount of space. I also add my 2 cents in this video, giving a specific tutorial in the beginning on tomato training and pruning. This video with Spencer is mostly going to cover greenhouse production, but if you watched our trellis video from a few weeks ago, you should have a base understanding of when and where you can or should do trellising from above. Or the TLDW, too long didn't watch, would be I don't recommend intensive pruning outdoors in wetter climates because the disease risk will basically make all that work not totally worthwhile. But you can likely get away with it in drier climates. So let's get to it with Spencer Rudolph of Sage Hill Ranch Gardens.
So this is our tomato tunnel. This winter, I kind of did a little educating on tunnel growing through Andrew Medford's book on tunnel management. One of the few things that we switched up, so we've always stuck to the traditional market garden style 30-inch wide beds. One of his recommendations in his book is actually shrinking the beds to 2 feet and then running with a 3-foot walkway. And that is because then what you're doing is doubling the leader, the main 2 heads on it. So what we've always done is run a single leader, which has been tremendous. But after reading and doing, like I said, a little bit more education on tunnel management, is that you actually can double your production without changing the square footage of your greenhouse.
Okay, just so it's clear what he's talking about. If you want to have a single leader here, this is your main stem. It's very obvious. It's the thicker one. It comes straight up. Then you would just train that one, right? So I would either bury this line, or you can tie it off at the base just really, really loosely. It doesn't have to be tight. So if I just wanted a single leader, I would do that, and then I would pop off every sucker, which is the branch that grows between the leaf and the main stem. If I want a double leader, then I take the lowest sucker that's pointed out that same direction, and I tie off to that. Okay? And then I pull all the other suckers off, all the way up. Keep that one on because that's your second stem. And then instead of clipping it, I just do this. And then you have a double leader. You leave the leaves on and pull the suckers off. And that's a double leader.
So this is a 30-foot wide by 110-foot long greenhouse. We would normally run 80 plants per row. We've now run 100 plants per 100 foot. And then what we then do is actually split the plant into two liters. So now you're in that 100 foot, you're now actually getting 200 plants. So now we've gone from, I think we were doing close to 600 plants last year. So now we have what would be considered 1,200 plants in here without ever even changing the square footage of our greenhouse. So I think that is just a huge concept. And when you think about, oh yeah, just add a new head, you think, oh yeah, no brainer. But then when you get into it, you're like, oh, this actually doubles production. The one thing that you have to do is instead of running a single line to the center, is you actually run the plant down the center, but then split the line into a 2-foot trellis line above the bed. That gives you, like I said, two separate new heads, doubling the production. There's definitely more management, things like that too. The whole thing switches. So not only does it double the production, but then now you're looking at double the equipment, double the time, the labor, everything goes into it. We do use the clippler units from NeverSync. I think that's a great system. Once the vines actually reach the metal, I think the system becomes even more effective and a lot easier to use. On the twine, it gets a little difficult with the clips that it tends to grab the twines differently. The other thing I was actually hoping to do with the dual leader, and I thought this was a great system, was that when we run cherry tomatoes, I'm sure other growers have this experience, that it gets really intense with growth and very rapid. I was hoping that with a dual leader, it actually makes it more of a manageable plant, taking more energy to run 2 heads. And so this is in hoping that it actually slows the plants a little bit to make it more manageable. But we'll see. They look pretty intense. A little warm in there without the fans on in the greenhouse, but I wanted to talk about the wickets that we use for the lower and lean system. Since we are using the Equipler system, they eventually at a certain point, hopefully in the next 2 months, what happens is the vine will reach the top, the lower fruit won't be ready to harvest quite yet, and we'll actually have to end up lowering it. And so in the past we've lowered it, but then the fruit ends up sitting too close to the ground or right on the ground, which becomes pretty annoying to be able to have such a tall tunnel and still have your fruit on the floor. The tunnel is at 16 feet. Our trellis is at 11 feet. With the cherries still growing so vigorously, they still reach the top to the point where we have to lower it. So we came up with with a wicket, idea of where the fruit will actually stand. As you lower it, it will lay on top of our 30-inch tall stand, and what happens is they lays on it, the fruit sits high enough off. We put edges on it to keep the fruit from falling off. We welded this ourselves off of some pencil rod and flat metal, and then at the bottom here you actually can see these are just bolts from the hardware store, inexpensive. It's cheaper than the pencil rod, and then not less cutting. But this is something that you could do at home. I do know that Neversink sells a wicket, the same thing. But it's something that is a must. If you're using a lower and lean system, I highly recommend it. We did it last year, and it keeps you from having to bend all the way to the floor, but keeping it just high enough where you can still pick, and keeps the fruit off the ground too. And it keeps it where you can keep moving and lowering and moving it down, which is nice. So this is one of our methods for tunnel management for pests. Normally, if my tunnel is completely sealed up, we'll release beneficials during summer to manage with aphids and other predatory mites and things like that. One of the things I did this winter, we ran into a real big issue with, during the winter months, having a real bad aphid outbreak within our tunnels. This tunnel isn't closed, and so what I came up with the idea is, well, maybe if we just seed sweet alyssum along the edges, the borders of our tunnels, if that would make a difference. And actually what ended up happening was that it made a huge difference, ended up wiping out our aphid issue within our tunnels. So much so that within each one of our tunnels, I have actually now seeded along the edges sweet alyssum. The management process of it is actually, what we'll do is we cut it back. That down there just past me has not been cut back, and so we will cut back half the tunnel at one point, let it come back to flower, and then recut the other side and let that come back to flower. So at no point the tunnel is emptied of the flower. We also sell these to our chefs and things like that. But the other thing is that since the tunnel is 30 feet wide, we didn't want to just do one side. I feel like there's probably like a 10 to 15 foot buffer for beneficials. So we did both sides. So both sides now has sweet alyssum on each side. This is, like I said, it's April, and I don't know what summer is going to look like with how intense it's going to get, and so the management there is still up for question. But I feel at the point, just cutting it back at quarter sections at a time is probably the best bet. Great aroma, smells great, aesthetically it looks beautiful, and like I said, the pest issue, even on our tomatoes, is at 0 at this point, and we've had it even more dense, where we come across with 300 feet of bok choy, turnips, just real densely packed in there with lettuces, and the issue has been mitigated down to, I would consider it 0. Fantastic, and that's just by seeding, sweet alyssum. Yeah.
All right, how awesome is Spencer? I love that farm, and you will be seeing one more video from Sage Hill Ranch Gardens in the coming weeks. We will make sure to put some links for how to follow Spencer in the show notes, as always. If you like these videos or any of the videos we do, consider picking up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook at no-tillgrowers.com, or a hat or other merch. Also consider joining us at our Patreon page, patreon.com/no-tillgrowers. Recently, there was a post up over there asking those members what they'd like to see more of from our farm in these videos. Being a Patreon member enables you to help make those decisions. Also, there are some new discount codes over there, which is also rad. That's patreon.com/no-till-growers, or just hit that super thanks button. That works too. So super thanks for watching. We'll see you later. Bye.
Greenhouse growers, production. What is this book called?